All right. I've been thinking about these YouTube channels I watch where they all start the same, where they're like, sit back and relax. I'm just like, well, some people are in their car listening, and maybe I'm just too critical. I don't know. I'm doing this one a little bit different. I'm going to see how long it takes to do this unbelievable big conversation. I've got a lot I want to say about it. And I don't know how long it's going to take. So I might do this in three parts, two parts, depending on how long. I'm trying not to rush myself so that I can give you the full thing. Now, I know you've probably noticed, but I gave you some time to take it in. All right. Did you notice yet? All right. Here it is. New studio. We're in a new studio. All right. Boy, that was a big payoff for that joke. Okay. Now, I've got my notes, so I might do a little reading here while I'm doing this, but it will be just to keep things in order because I just want to keep my thoughts concise because I don't want to spend a lot of time on some of this. I want you to be able to take it all in quickly. Um, the quality of the debate. As I've stated previously, there are two forms of debate. There are where the two are interacting and offering defeaters to each other's positions. Another good way of having a debate, and sometimes it's a good position, especially if you think you're on the weaker side of an argument, um, is to try to present your side as the best possible way of thinking about things. Not necessarily spending much time critiquing your opponent, but just saying, look, here's my position, and present it as a better alternative. Um, so I have a summary of each individual participant. Alistair McGrath, we'll start with him. I felt that his presentation was adequate but unimpressionable. I don't want to use the word unimpressive, just because I think that'd be a little bit harsh. Just unimpressionable. He tended to meander a lot before he got to his point, and I don't know if he was gathering his thoughts or was taken off guard. But this debate worked itself out that it was more of the two sides presenting their positions as opposed to offering defeaters. Now, McGrath did from time to time try to interject a little bit of challenge, not as much as Justin Bradley did to both participants. But I will say this, when you hear me talk about the two, it's going to sound like McGrath was awful. And that's not entirely fair. It's not that McGrath was awful. Again, he was adequate. It's just that he didn't present Christianity as a robust alternative. He just sort of, I think he spent a little too much time being polite, to be honest with you. And it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just that sometimes you just want people to get to the point. Maybe you're thinking that about me right now. But it's just kind of like, really, sometimes I had to listen to him a lot to even hear his points. That's a problem because maybe I'm overanalyzing, but you watch the debate yourself and see what you think. I didn't catch his opposition sometimes. Um, by the way, being in a new studio means there's better camera work. And that is not a placebo promise. That's a fact. All right. I'll say this. James White would have been a much better opponent to Weinstein than McGrath, in my opinion. White, you could say that about White on a lot of fronts, but that's just my opinion. Weinstein, he was thought-provoking, but not threatening. Now, what do I mean by that? Weinstein offered a enthusiastic, well thought out position. Really had you thinking. He made you think, which I appreciated. And am I saying that, look, if you've studied philosophy, none of this stuff is new to you. but it was nice to hear someone off the cuff that this was embedded deep in them, that this was their position. He would call himself a scientific materialist. He's a form of an atheist, but he was reluctant to categorize himself as an atheist. Fine by me. He was actually reluctant to accept any categories because it brought up critique. In fact, towards the end of the debate, McGrath says, look, your views are kind of religious. He didn't put it, unfortunately, that directly. And no one called him on it because he said, well, they're not religious, they're practical. But he didn't say that either. Weinstein sort of just wanted not to have a category. Well, if you have a category, it leaves yourself open to critique. And he seemed to want to avoid that. And so that's the way that went. Winner of the debate. I think the winner of the debate, and I'm not saying this to sound objective, it's if I thought McGrath won the debate, I promise you, I would tell you. But I really felt that Weinstein won the debate. And the reason why, and if you watch this, I don't want to prejudice anyone's views. You come to your own conclusions. But my conclusion is that Weinstein was very direct. He never meandered. McGrath meandered a lot. Like he kept saying, he at one point said, he was insightful, and he said, well, it seems like Weinstein's position had a moral component. And that was a hidden underlayer that was insightful on McGrath's part, but unfortunately he didn't say why he thought that was the case. And it wasn't apparent. By the end of the debate, Weinstein admits that, okay? And you can see it, but it shows that McGrath was ahead of the curve. It shows McGrath had done his study. But it wasn't apparent at this point in the debate. So it was just like he had come to certain conclusions, I think, that didn't make a lot of sense when he brought it up. And so that kind of hurt McGrath's case, I think. And again, to sit here, so like at another point where McGrath goes, how does he put it? Well, religion is not an empirical notion. Terrible imitation, by the way. Is zany impersonation. I just think that it was kind of like, I remember when he said that, I thought, that's neither here nor there. Weinstein isn't going to care about this. And that's precisely what Weinstein said. He said, I don't really care. He didn't use these words, but he's like, I don't really care if it's empirical, of an empirical notion. And he said, it's a cultural notion, not an empirical notion. It's kind of like, why does Weinstein care? He doesn't care. And the reason why is this, because Weinstein's making the point that religion is part of the evolutionary process. And for McGrath to respond ultimately with, it's not an empirical notion, is not a defeater. But it was couched as a defeater. Weinstein just brushed it off. And you could pick any one point in a debate, as I did, where I thought that Blackmore had really just self-defeated, collapsed, when she brought out this empirical data. And I had this debate at work with somebody the other day. I was talking about the concept of nothingness with this guy, who I know is kind of I don't know, just a skeptic. And he said, well, look, he's like, we have mathematical equations for how the universe began. And I went, oh yeah, I said, we have mathematical equations against those equations. And he was like, and I'm like, what you're doing is you're appealing to a factor which you've provided no evidence for. In other words, it's a bad argument. I can present the same empirical data to you in the same form. Unless you give me what these equations are, I'm not obligated to believe them. And same thing for Weinstein here. He didn't put it that way, but it's the same thing. It's not an empirical notion. It's a cultural notion. Weinstein can just go, yeah, but I'm concerned about them arriving as a result of evolution. So it doesn't really matter to me whether you consider them empirical. I'm offering you this as a response. So it just wasn't enough to just say and state it's not empirical. Okay. So that's my introduction. So it looks like, since that's 10 minutes, it looks like I'm going to do point number 1, and then I'll do my final 2 points in a part 2 on this. Here's the thing. I have loved finding a moment at work to devote some time to Jesus. And I mean that. And what I mean by that, I put it in a way that I'm devoting that time to Jesus. I don't mean it that way in a sort of a phony, and not that people that say that are always phony, but I mean, I like that time that I think about and reflect on Jesus throughout the week and give it to you for Saturday. So I might drop 2 here, and I don't want to throw too many down for those of you who watch this, but I really want to give you that tomorrow. So let's go point 1. All right, I've entitled this, I'm sorry, the Zany Professor. That's the Zany Facts over there, by the way. The Zano Facts. The Zano Facts is in, okay? And he's entitled these, all right? And point number 1 is, where does the Zany Professor get this? Weinstein's fatal flaw. Does that not make you want to hear this first point? It's so zany. All right. So I'm going to read it directly here. The Zany Professor says this: beliefs compete in a pecking order and arise out of competition. This is Weinstein's point, okay? Beliefs compete in a pecking order and arise out of competition. The most practical beliefs in terms of survival serve their temporal and conditional purposes. For Weinstein, beliefs are evaluated on their practical conditions, not on their ontological status. This is very important. That may have made no sense. I'm giving you the technical kind of interpretation, and then I'm going to move into the more practical way of understanding it. Weinstein basically says this: there are probably accounts of Jesus that were out there, but they're inferior to what we ended up with in the New Testament. Now, for the uneducated mind, and it's not only for the educated, okay, that's not what I'm saying, but for those who are not practiced in the art of listening to this kind of thing, might be tempted to think, that's right, you got the Gospel of Judas, and he's right. There are inferior accounts. That's not what this guy's talking about. He's saying what we have are the most practical gospels for human flourishing. That evolution, you see, evolution is all encompassing in this. And so what we have in the New Testament, in the Gospels, is evolution's presentation for your best life now. He is the Joel Osteen of materialists. What we're seeing here is shades of Alvin Plantinga. Alvin Plantinga has an argument, and this is why this is going to take time. He has an argument that says that evolution does not foster an adequate epistemology for materialism. What is that jumble of words? Let me break it down in an illustration. Okay. This is partially Plantinga's illustration. I've enhanced it. I've embellished on it, not enhanced it. I've embellished on it over the years when I'm presenting it to people. So here's what I would say. You got caveman number 1. He sees a beautiful woman. He bonks her over the head with his club, starts dragging her by her hair back to his cave. Caveman number 2 also sees a beautiful woman, bonks her over the head with his club, drags her by the hair, heading back to his cave. Caveman number 1 runs into a lion. Caveman number 1 thinks, this lion's going to kill me. He's going to eat me. He's hungry. I'm going to give him the woman so he'll eat her and I can run away and live. And guess what? He survives. Caveman number 2 sees the lion and thinks, there's my God. He wants a sacrifice. I'll give him this woman. He gives the woman, goes away, lives. They both lived. Question is this: do you need true beliefs to survive in an evolutionary system? No. Can you claim to know something if it's not true? I can't claim to know that the moon is made out of cheese because it's not true. So evolution does not have to give you true beliefs. You don't have to believe something that's true to survive. You just have to survive. Weinstein doesn't have a problem with this. Now, hold that thought. McGrath challenges for specificity of a definition of religion. Pointless meandering. Who cares what, and that's what Weinstein basically does. No, I don't care what the definition is. Now, given what I've told you about Plantinga, I'll give you my opinion. How did Weinstein make his beliefs objective and not practical? He didn't. So his propositions are merely practical, not necessarily true. You see, the position that Weinstein has to take to say that to critique religion, he must also fall under that rubric. He must also claim that his beliefs are a result of evolution. If his beliefs are a result of evolution, then what he's offering is mere practicality, not necessarily what's true. So Weinstein's just telling, and by the way, I don't think he would necessarily see the problem with this. He would say, yeah, what I'm telling you is so that we survive. And he has no problem with that. The only issue is this. How can we know that what you're saying is true? How do we come to the conclusion that what you're saying is true? This is very hairy and very technical, so let me break it down a little bit, okay? Weinstein is assuming that not only what he's saying to you is and to McGrath is not only helpful for humanity's survival, he's also saying that what he's conveying is true. But how does he substantiate what he's saying is true if evolution doesn't need true statements for us to survive? So all he can say is that his position is practical, not necessarily true. Therefore, there's no way he has an adequate way of knowing things. And yet he knows things. You see, we're not claiming he doesn't know things. That's not what I'm claiming, and that's not what anyone's claiming. We're saying you do know things, but you have no basis for arriving at how you know things. You've undermined. So think about, I'm going to summarize, because he actually went into memes a little bit, which happened in the last debate. Okay, so I learned this from a guy named Peter Van Inwagen on when it comes to how things are objects, how do we know, how are things real and not real and so forth. So I'm going to say this. When we talk about the human mind, okay, and all the things that are true about the human mind, I'm going to categorize those things as artifacts, okay? So Weinstein's mind is an artifact. And his proposition is this. The artifact, and why I'm saying artifact is all the things that encompass a mind, whether it's archetypes, memes, all that debate, all in the background. Whatever his mind is, it's an artifact. And it rests on the idea that knowledge doesn't need to be true. It just needs to enhance our opportunities to survive. And that is false. Demonstrably so. It's false. Our minds must contain, the artifact of your mind must contain what is true. And if you don't have a worldview that can substantiate that, then you have no arguments at all. So Weinstein defeats his own position by not offering a reason why his beliefs are in fact true, and therefore you should listen to him because it will help us survive. It's not enough just to say we'll survive. You have to be able to have true beliefs in order to have knowledge. He has knowledge, but has undermined his abilities to substantiate them as true. We don't want to be pragmatists. Pragmatism has fatal flaws. that I'm not going to go into. I'm just touching the surface of some of those flaws. But you can't trust that his worldview is comprehensive at this point. McGrath doesn't go there, unfortunately. He just wants them to specify. And I hope this wasn't confusing. It's a lot to take in. But just suffice it to say this. And you may want to listen to this a few times if you don't understand it. Weinstein's fatal flaw here is that he cannot claim that his beliefs are true. So his evaluations are resting on a fatal supposition, shifting sand, if you will.